Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ghost Gals Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Janine.
And I'm Michelle.
So today we decided that we wanted to talk a little bit about haunted dolls. I'm sure many of you guys have had some spooky dreams or fears of dolls in your lifetime. I know for sure I have definitely had some weird moments with dolls. Many of them out there that are proclaimed and certified to be haunted dolls, including Annabelle, Patricia, and Robert the doll. So I know, Michelle, that you've actually physically seen Robert the doll.
Yes, I have. Yeah, it was crazy. So Robert the doll, some say he's the one that the Chucky movies were based on. Now, I think there's other dolls that they say he's also based on, but Robert the doll is the one that he's based on, or a lot of the stories. Robert the doll lives, if you will, lives in Key West, Florida. He was a doll that belonged to a little boy, a little 4-year-old boy named Robert Eugene Otto. And the story goes that Robert was actually made for him by one of their Bahamian servants. And it's also said that Robert was very mischievous and would lock the servants in closets and just not treat them very well. And so they put a curse on this doll. And it's a pretty big doll. So he would have been almost like the full size of Robert when he received him. And Robert got so attached to this doll that it was almost like he imprinted himself on it, right? And he would blame the doll for any wrongdoings in the house and say, "Oh, I didn't do it, that the doll did it." And he became so attached to this doll that he started calling the doll Robert and changed his name and started going by Gene, which is short for Eugene, his middle name, if you recall. And of course, it was said that the servant who gave him the doll practiced hoodoo and black magic. So over the years, Gene kept this doll with him, and he even supposedly built like a small room or house for him up in the attic of the house. And this is a house that is still there today in Key West. And in fact, if you do, one of the many ghost tours there, a lot of times it will be on the tour. And I believe it's still today an Airbnb. So Gene grows up, goes off, gets married, brings his young bride back, inherits the house, lives there with her. But very soon, she even started getting really creeped out with Gene and his relationship with this doll. And there's reports that people in the neighborhood would see this doll sitting in the window and waving. It would change his facial expressions. Once Gene died, I guess the doll would still be sitting out, and people, guests at the home, would say they would see him moving. And so the wife stuck him in like a cedar chest, and after she passed, they found him, and now he resides at a museum in Key West, and you can go see him. And I did. And what's interesting is there's still a lot of stories around Robert today. There are still reports by guests at the museum there where people will say if they start taunting him, making fun of the doll, pointing, that people have been injured, pushed down. One guy broke his leg. There's also this lore that if you take a picture of him, then it's something like all your photos will go black, or then he'll appear in all your photos. So of course I tested this. All my photos were fine. But I did, while we were in Key West years back, I did make my poor husband drive all the way across the island and go out to this museum just so I can see that doll who's locked away in the cupboard. But what's just so fascinating is there were just so many reports from people in the community that would swear that they saw this doll move, and he'd even be in the window just like a little person. So pretty creepy if you ask me. Now, I personally, thank goodness, have never had firsthand experience with a haunted doll. I think it would freak me out. Ghosts, poltergeist, whatever, I will be the first one to run into and after them. But a haunted doll, no, thank you. What about you, Janine? You kind of hinted earlier that you had some firsthand experience.
Yeah, so before we started recording, I was sharing with you that like the haunted doll thing is just like a real thing for me because I had the my size Barbie when I was a kid. So it was the size of like a 2 or 3-year-old kid.
For
And
those.
when you held her hand and moved with her, she would walk alongside you. And so my grandmother pretty much let me do whatever I wanted. And I was not like the typical girly girl. So I really didn't care for my dolls like most girls would. So her face was this crazy orange color from me smearing all sorts of lipsticks and makeup all over her. She had no hair left from me putting like
Oh,
lotions and stuff in her her hair. And so by the time I was 27, I went to stay with my grandmother for a while her house was being worked on, and my ex-husband went and stayed at his mom's for a bit. And while I was staying with her, this doll with no hair and a bright orange face, just chilling in the corner of her living room. Creepy enough to come across that in the middle of the night.
yeah.
But when you come out to get a glass of water and the doll is, standing like this, and when you turn off the kitchen light and head to go to the bathroom and her arms up like this,
Oh, no way.
not okay. There were times too that my kids would come out in the middle of the night and she would no longer be in the corner, she'd be sitting on the couch. And so at first I'm thinking, one of my kids is messing with us,
Of course.
totally messing with us. But when my kids were at their dad's house, the doll moved. And my
Yeah.
grandmother said, "My God, why would you put it there?" And I said, "Who?" And I come around the corner and the doll is standing leaning up against her curio cabinet that she has all her old teapots and teacups and stuff in. And I said, "I did not move that doll." My grandmother's walking around making sure all the windows are locked, all the doors are locked. She's just convinced that somebody has broken in the house and is messing
To
with
move your
us,
doll.
right? Moving this doll around. I eventually decided that we were going to get rid of this doll. So we had a company coming out as we were downsizing, and they were going to haul a bunch of stuff away. So I put the doll in a cardboard box with a bunch of other stuff out in the front for them to haul it away. And I pay the guys, I come back inside, and this doll is sitting on the couch.
No, no, no.
So I'm telling you, I tried to toss this doll in the trash can. Once my grandmother passed, we were moving out of the house, it had sold. I moved all my stuff to my mom and dad's house, and we threw a bunch of stuff away. The doll was in the trash can. When I was moving my stuff out of boxes, cardboard boxes, into plastic boxes at my mom's house, the doll was in her family room. I cannot get rid of this doll.
So
I'm waiting for it to pop up where I'm living now.
So where is it now?
Still in my mom's family room as far as I know. But I'm waiting for it to pop up here where I'm living now. I would have never, I mean, dolls creep me out. They always have, but I would have never really considered that that type of an object would be haunted. But there's lots of stories around these. Annabelle.
Hmm.
The main stories with her was not only was it tormenting these girls that had it in the house, but people who would actually come in to Ed and Lorraine Warren's museum, if they would open the case and touch her, bad things would happen. There was a gentleman who haunted the doll, said he didn't believe that there was a demon attached to it. Him and his girlfriend were about an hour and a half up the road. They were on a motorcycle and they had a crash and both died. There's been many bad things. People who have been in the vicinity where the doll was touched, houses burning down, like just kind of crazy stuff that just after a certain point, it can't just be a coincidence. There's got to be something to it.
Well, and we hear stories of these dolls all over the place. Like there's one called Poopa the doll that was given to its owners in Italy around the early late 20s. And the owner of this doll claimed that it would request gifts and its facial expression would change. And they would find it in different, kind of like your doll, like it would be in different rooms for where it left. And now it's behind glass at a museum. And there was even a story of Okiku, the doll. It's a Japanese doll that's said to be inhabited by the spirit of a servant girl who was killed and thrown down a well. And the doll's hair mysteriously grows, trimmed, and it'll grow again. And it's actually kept in a temple and maintained by staff in Japan. So it was actually living in a temple. So they treat it almost like like a living child. Yeah, there's so many of these stories, and it's just so interesting how we see them all over the world. These seem to come from like the late 1800s, early 1900s. So I don't know what was going on in doll making during that time frame, but
So what would you say you think kind of leads to this? Because like with Robert the doll, I feel like maybe that curse is one thing, but for him to give it a name and to refer to it like it was a living thing kind of fed that, in my
yeah,
opinion.
I would agree in that case. I would agree. It's almost like his energy fed it. It's almost like he manifested that energy, and maybe there was some outside energy that, and this sort of created an opening for it to come in, or maybe it's almost like a piece of himself went in there. But like in your case, I would say with a lot of cases, I would think it would be something traumatic happened in the vicinity of the doll or related with the doll, or maybe from the person giving the doll to the person it was to whom it was gifted. But in a case like with yours, no, maybe it's a spirit needing a vessel, something to inhabit. I mean, I guess better a doll than a person, right? but still, it's crazy. And I don't feel like there's a lot of stories around this, but I don't feel like there's been a lot of research done around this specific type of haunting as there are almost any other kind out there.
I will say, like with my doll situation, it really wasn't moving around until my middle son, who at the time was 12 years old, opened a Dybbuk box that he had found.
Oh,
So, somebody took that box, trapped something inside it, and him and his buddies thought it would be a good idea to open it up and let it out. And then our doll started moving. So, as you said, better than possessing or catching to a human, but when it's a doll and it just keeps moving around the house, I mean, I'm telling you, like it had the eyes that when you would move her, they would open and close, right? And it would do this weird thing where one would roll back and one would go down. And it was like the creepiest thing. The facial expressions, like you said with Robert the doll, would change
yeah.
enough to make like cold chills go through my body, just knowing that something wasn't right.
Oh,
I
just
staged it. I Palo Santo'd it. Nothing was enough. I feel like we needed to have it in a bonfire or something to get rid of whatever was in that doll.
I'm thinking in a box with chains around it, rope, duct tape. you know,
Bury it like 8 feet down, like
off the
scary.
off the Coronado Bridge. I waited.
With dolls, they do have that human like thing to them. And I think that's what makes it so much more creepy than haunted items such as Victorian mourning lockets that
Mhm.
had hair and teeth and photos of people who had passed on. That attachment made sense to me a little bit more just because it had human pieces to it, like the teeth and the hair. But it's not quite as creepy as something that can move its hands and its eyes and its head to look at you.
And plus, it looks like a mini human, right? And I think it's interesting because like kind of throughout modern culture, there's this whole thing about being creeped out. I think most people are creeped out by these types of dolls. Like it's almost like either you're a collector of them or you want nothing to do
No in between.
yeah, no in between. It's almost like we have this visceral like fear of them, almost like it's like innate or in our bones or something. you have like this natural fear of like the dark forest for obvious reasons. It's almost like that same type of fear with these dang dolls. So yeah.
Well, and in investigating out in the open areas that we've gone out to, like Alpine Cemetery, there's literally something that stands like 2 feet tall. It has a creepy laugh and it will dart in and out of the road. We've captured the sound of its laughter on EVP. We've gotten, weird, misty, zigzags or whatever in photos where wherever it was running, you couldn't quite catch it on film, but you could tell that something moved past the camera. So to know that stuff like that's out there, and then to have a doll about the same size just doing weird things in your house, plus to perpetuate it, people know that this is a fear. So Chucky and the Annabelle movies have been created to go ahead and perpetuate that fear that people do have of these dolls.
And rightly so. Cautionary tales.
You will not find any dolls in my home, just saying.
Yeah, like my daughter wasn't a big doll. She had an American Doll for a short time, and but no movement from there.
I think the last time before I moved in with my grandmother, we had a doll in the house. It was The Undertaker. It was one of those wrestling dolls, and it was a pretty good size, maybe like that. That thing would make noises when you slammed him, like he was being wrestled, right?
Oh yeah, I think I remember those.
But my kids would be dead asleep in their room, and I would hear him saying, "I will bury you," from the other room, and just talking on his own. Stone, just like his catchphrases. But you walk in and it's just laying there on the floor, nobody touching it, and it's talking. Took the batteries out and it continued to talk. You may be correct in the fact that, sometimes a spirit will just come in and use whatever it can to make that connection.
Yeah, I've had kids' toys do similar things, not the talking, but like just going off, and there's nothing to set them off, and it's not moving floorboards or anything. And yeah, there's nothing creepier in the middle of the night than a kid's toy just going off
For
without
no reason.
reason, especially if you take the batteries out. Yeah.
Our dog used to growl at it in the corner and then it would go off. But the dog would growl before it would actually make noises. So the dog was anticipating or sensing whatever it was that was manipulating the doll.
Yeah. Pets know. They know.
I know what everybody's getting for Christmas this year. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Now I want one and take it out with us on our investigations and see what we get. That'll be the new piece of our equipment. We'll do another equipment session and we'll throw the dolls in. Right.
Yeah, Chris has a Boo Bear, and that thing is creepy to me too. Like little voice, "Hi, can you count to 10? 1, 2." Like it just, and we're putting it out there to like bring the spirits in. So I'm like, hopefully nothing gets attached to this Boo Bear and goes home with her one of these nights.
Well, that's a good setup, Janine, for our next episode where we will talk about trigger objects like Boo Bear.
We want to thank you all for joining us tonight for our episode of Ghost Gals. Check out our next episode coming soon. And as Michelle said, it will be about trigger objects.
All right. It was good talking to you, Janine.
Good talking to you as well. See you next time.